Hi, this is Anil and welcome to the video tutorial for the Learning Lad on C++ programming. So in this tutorial we're going to be learning something called for loop. So in the last couple of tutorials we have learned about the while loop and the do while loop. This for loop is another form of loop available in C++. So to use this for loop we're going to use the keyword for, and between these parentheses we need to write the expressions or the statements which are responsible for the working of this for loop, and between these curly braces we're going to write the statements that we want to execute. So here the first statement inside this curly braces is going to be the initialization, and this initialization statement is nothing but we're gonna create a variable which is called loop counter, and we're gonna set the initial value of that counter variable here. And next we need something called condition. So every time this condition is checked before running the statements inside this loop. If this condition holds good, then the statement will be executed, and if this condition fails or this condition yields a false value, then the statements will not be executed. And the next one is called updation. Okay, and this initialization and condition and updation are separated by the semicolons, so don't get confused here. When we use this in our program it will be clear. Alright, now we're gonna see how to use this for loop in our program. So as I told you in the while loop tutorial, if you guys wanted to print some message, let's say 30 or 50 times, at that time you can't really write the statements 30 or 50 times. What you guys can do is you guys can write the statement only once and make the compiler to execute the statement as many times that you want. So here for the demonstration purpose I'm going to create a variable and I'm going to call it as counter, and we're going to initialize it later. And next we're gonna write the for loop. So it's gonna be for keyword and then pair of parentheses and then pair of curly braces, and between these curly braces our statement will be there. And here inside this parentheses we need to write the initialization. So this initialization is nothing but initializing the loop counter variable. We're gonna initialize this counter variable here. So it's gonna be counter equal to 1, and also remember to add the semicolon here. Next we need to write the condition or the expression which will be evaluated to check whether we have to execute the statements inside this loop or not. So here for the demonstration purpose we just want to print some text, let's say 30 times. So here we're gonna write counter less than or equal to 30. That's because we want to execute the statements inside this loop till this counter variable is going to contain a value of 30, and when it becomes 31, at that time this expression is going to fail, and the control will come out of this loop. And next add a semicolon, and next we need to write something called updation. So as I told you in the while loop tutorial, if we don't update our counter variable or this loop counter variable, then our program will be in infinite loop. That's why we need to make sure that at some point this condition or this expression will evaluate to false. So we're gonna write counter plus plus. So this initialization, condition and the updation, and inside this loop we're gonna write the statement that we want to execute. So here it's just gonna be a cout statement, and we can output the counter variables value also, counter, and add an arrow, then learning lad rocks, and add end line. Alright, now I'm gonna save it and build and run this. So you guys can see here our program has printed learning lad rocks 1 to 30 times. So what exactly happened here is when the system executes this for loop, when this for loop is encountered for the first time, the variable, this counter variable, will be initialized to the value specified here, and then the condition is checked, and if this condition is satisfied, then the statements inside the loop is executed, and then after executing all the statements inside this loop, this counter variable will be updated, and again this condition is checked, and if it is satisfied, all the statements will be executed. This updation is done, again condition is checked. When this condition becomes false, the control will come out of this for loop. And another thing is, if you guys want to create this variable here inside this for loop, you guys can do that while initializing. So I'm gonna remove this here, and I'm gonna write int counter, no problem. But if you create this variable here, then this variable counter is available only inside this for loop, so you can't refer this variable counter outside this for loop. Just remember that. And also here in updation, you guys don't need to increment it every time. It may be decrement, or if you guys want to add any number to this value, you guys can do that, but it must be updation process, which is gonna cause this expression to fail at some point. Alright guys, now I'm gonna save this, build and run this, so you guys can see our program has executed as it was doing before. And the last thing that I want you guys to teach in this tutorial is, let's say if you guys want to create an infinite loop. At that time, what you guys can do is, you guys can remove all these statements and leave the initialization blank, add a semicolon, leave the condition blank, then add a semicolon. That's it. If I run this program, this is gonna be an infinite loop. So I'm gonna delete the counter variable here because we haven't declared it, and also I'm gonna remove this arrow. I'm gonna save it, build and run this, and when I run this program, the program will not stop just because this is a infinite loop. Build and run. So you guys can see here, my program is not stopping. It's in infinite loop. So this is it guys, this is about the for loop in C++. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. If you guys have any doubt, don't hesitate to ask us, and like our Facebook page at facebook.com/learninglad, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.